Faith in the fire, the deeper life family who survived the Yelwata massacre. The night the fire swallowed their home, their voices were lifted in prayer. The night machetes tore through their village, they were wrapped in the arms of God. As the sound of gunfire echoed in the distance, their youngest child clung to a worn Bible, not knowing that the words within had just saved her life. It was a Thursday evening in Yelwata, a quiet farming community in Gumar local government area of Benue state. The cool air whispered over maize fields and the muddy paths worn smooth by generations of footsteps. For the Adejo family, humble farmers and committed members of the Deeper Life Bible Church, this evening was sacred. They had gathered at the church for an all-night prayer vigil. The father, Brother Matthias Adejo, a tall, quiet man in his early 50s, had insisted they attend together. God deserves our first and best, he had told his wife, Rebecca, who cradled their youngest, 6-year-old Ruth, while their teenage sons Daniel and John carried their well-worn Bibles. As they stepped into the simple structure that housed their fellowship, a modest, zinc-roofed building with cement floors and plastic chairs, none of them knew that back home, shadows were gathering. Armed herdsmen, wielding machetes, AK-47s, and torches, were already making their way into the village under the cover of darkness. The vigil was intense. Prayers surged like waves, raw, desperate, full of faith. Some prayed for rain, some for peace, others for the protection of their families in these uncertain times. Brother Matthias prayed silently, his lips barely moving. Lord, cover our home, our village, our land. Around 2 a.m., someone's phone buzzed quietly. Then another. Murmurs began to ripple through the congregation. A man burst through the church doors, sweat mixing with fear on his face. They've come, the herdsmen. Yelwata is burning. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mothers clutched their children. Men ran outside. A few dashed toward the village, though the danger was still very real. Pastor Obina stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. We are under the wings of the Almighty. Don't panic. Let's pray. But the Adejo family could not pray. Not right then. Their house, their farm, everything they had built with calloused hands over decades, was back there. And it was burning. They waited till dawn before returning. As the early sun cast golden light on the charred remains of what used to be their home, the Adejo family stood in silence. The mud walls had collapsed into blackened ash. Their goats were gone. The cassava barn destroyed. The entire street where they lived was now a graveyard of smoke and sorrow. Rebecca fell to her knees, wailing. Daniel stared blankly at the ruin, whispering, "This is where my bed used to be." Ruth hugged her father's leg, confused and scared. Brother Matthias said nothing, but tears streamed down his cheeks. He rarely cried. But this day, he did. A neighbor emerged from behind a tree, limping, his shirt soaked in blood. They killed everyone in Brother Yakubu's compound. His wife, his son, gone. I saw them with my own eyes. More reports trickled in. Over 20 homes burned. Countless injured. Some slaughtered in their sleep. Others while running. Yet somehow, the Adejo family had survived, because they were in the church. It's like Passover, whispered Rebecca. We were in the presence of God, and the angel of death passed over us. The massacre in Yelwata would make national headlines. Politicians would offer empty condolences. Security operatives would arrive too late. But in the ruins of that village, hope flickered in the unlikeliest of places, inside the heart of a family with nothing left but faith. In the weeks that followed, the Adejos took shelter in the church. Members donated food, mats, and clothing. One woman gave her only wrapper to Rebecca. Another shared maize from her tiny harvest. The pastor opened his home to the children. But Brother Matthias insisted on helping rebuild, not just their home, but the hope of Yelwata. They meant to scatter us, he said, but we will gather. They meant to burn our future, but we will plant again. Every morning, the family would walk to their burnt plot and clear debris. Daniel and John salvaged bent nails, while Ruth made flower patterns in the ash. And each evening, they returned to the church, still homeless, but not hopeless. One Sunday, during service, Pastor Obina called the Adejo family forward. He spoke with trembling voice. Some of you don't know this, but this family was supposed to be in their home the night the herdsmen struck. But they chose God. They chose to be in his house. And because of that, they are alive. The congregation stood to their feet, clapping, crying. Some whispered prayers. Others broke down completely. Then the unexpected happened. A young man who had fled Yelwata years ago, Emmanuel, now a successful contractor in Makurdi, heard about the Adejo family's survival on Facebook. The testimony touched him deeply. He had once been a Deeper Life member before backsliding. But something about this family's story broke him. He returned to Yelwata. "I used to think God had abandoned this land," he said, eyes full of regret. "But this family proved is still here." Emmanuel donated roofing sheets, cement, and iron rods. Within 2 weeks, the first new house in the burnt section of Yelwata was rising, the Adejo's home. Their farm couldn't be saved that year, but a church member gave them a small plot to start afresh. The youth in church volunteered to clear it. A widow offered cassava cuttings. The miracle of community began to multiply. Rebecca now leads a women's prayer group in the church. Ruth sings in the children's choir. Daniel and John are planning to become missionaries, fired up by a faith that was tested in the furnace of death, yet did not burn. And Brother Matthias? He never stops giving God thanks. "Everything was taken," he often says, "but God gave us back more: life, unity, faith, and a story that brings him glory." In a nation wearied by violence and forgotten promises, stories like the Adejo family shine like a lamp in darkness. The Yelwata massacre was meant to be a tragedy remembered for pain. But for this Deeper Life family, it became the altar where faith was tested and proved unshakable. Because sometimes, the safest place to be isn't behind strong walls or locked doors. Sometimes, it's in the presence of God.